What is up, my fellow cardboard lovers? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, we've got another tier list. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but they are a blast every time I do them. You guys seem to like them, so yeah, tier list. This is every single new archetype so far for the year of 2021. There's actually 12 already. We're only halfway through the year, and we already have 12 new archetypes revealed, so I'm going to be tiering them out here. As you can see, I've got 5 tiers. Real quick, just to go over that. You start at S tier, obviously, right? This is like, it literally has everything you could ask for in an archetype. Now, we're not just talking straight up competitively. There are other factors here I'm trying to consider as well. They need to be beauteous. So the artwork needs to be phenomenal, fun. Right? It's an interesting, cool way to, like, new way of playing a deck. And it needs to be a powerhouse to end up in S tier for me, right? It needs to be meta relevant out the gate. Just good stuff. It's kind of like this, but just maybe one of these factors isn't as good. Maybe it's not as new of like a new and interesting way of playing a deck, but it's still like meta contender, and like the artwork is really cool, right? So it's just one kind of tier below that, but maybe it just doesn't have the oomph to end up in S tier. B tier is better than Gumbo with potential, because B tier tends to end up being like rogue decks, like that can compete with meta decks and like do some cool things, but they're not quite there yet, and they need you know, maybe more support down the line that'll end up getting them up to A or S tier. You know, competitive is probably the number 1 factor I'm considering here, but you know, there are other things too that can get you know, decks bumped up. C is maybe one day this archetype will get awesome support, because like B tier decks tend to only need like 1 or 2 really good cards and they can jump to A tier, whereas a C tier deck probably needs one of those like waves of like 5 cards just to like skyrocket them, because 1 card's probably just not enough. So maybe one day for C tier, but you know, maybe it has cool artwork, but it's just bad and lame. And then D is just pure dingus. This is like nothing. Like, don't like the artwork, don't like the way it plays, don't like its competitive level, and it's just all poop. It's all dingus. It's all pure dingus. So yeah, let's get into this thing. Yeah, we'll just start off with, we'll just go in order here. It's kind of weird. Actually, you know what? Let's go in the right order here. Let's go chronologically, okay? So we'll start with Blazing Vortex, because that was the first set for the TCG that introduced new archetypes this year. And we'll start off with Springans, right? Springans are pretty interesting. They have a cool mechanic with their field spell and stuff. They still play with Albaz, part of the Dogmatica lore. I'm gonna put them in B tier. Man, and maybe I'm being generous here, but I just like Springans a lot. I love their artwork. I mean, all that Dogmatica lore, kind of Ecclesia lore, Albaz lore, whatever you want to call it. They all have phenomenal artwork. So artwork always does it for me for all of those archetypes. I like that they're machine and fire. I love the way their field spell plays. They're just missing like 1 or 2 really good cards, and I really think they could immediately be like a really good, I don't know about tier 1, but a really solid deck. So for me, they end up in B tier for me, just not good enough to end up in A tier at the moment, but still a really cool archetype starting us off in 2021. Next up, also in Blazing Vortex, War Rocks. Yeah, War Rocks. I almost want to put War Rocks in pure dingus, but the only thing that's keeping them in C tier for me is 2 things. 1, I love the artwork for this archetype. I always did from the day it was released. Even just the artwork, because we got the artwork revealed before all the card effects. I loved this artwork for this deck. It was like the same style as like Gravekeepers, but like more, I don't know, barbarian, more you know, less magical, more, you know, just pure brutes, right? And then we get the cards revealed and they stink. The deck is awful. This is definitely a maybe one day. It could be pure dingus if I didn't like the artwork. And secondly, we got the new quick play spell. We got actually 7 new cards. Most of them aren't that great, but at least we did get that new quick play spell that is just like a straight up negate if you control a War Rock. So that's actually a really good card that does make them somewhat respectable. At least compared to what they were before. So I'm going to put them in C tier, and if Konami loves them so much, maybe we'll just get another 7 cards and another 7 cards, and then they have to be good at some point, right? Ay. And then lastly, for Blazing Vortex, we have S-Force. This is another one I think probably goes to B tier. You could almost argue C tier, but it does have a couple things going for it. It's got a field spell that searches. That's always good. Chiyomaru, their main normal summon, actually is pretty good. They just got new cards from Lightning Overdrive, including a trap card that gives them some pretty solid, like, just disruption / removal. I think it just pops cards equal to the number of S-Forces you control. So, you know, 2 to 3 pops potentially is pretty good. So yeah, like I think unfortunately their mechanic is a little bit too based around like zones, and it's kind of the same thing that makes Mech Knights kind of iffy sometimes, but almost worse. I think Mech Knights are generically just work better than these things do, but I still think S-Force does have some nice cards, some consistency pieces, some disruption pieces that can be solid. They just need a little bit more. They just need 1, 2, maybe 3 nice cards, and they could actually be something interesting. But yeah, that's our Blazing Vortex stuff, starting us off there. Next up, we have Ghosts from the Past stuff, starting with Sun Avalon. Now, I know this was an anime deck, but we're getting it here in the TCG for the very, very first time. This is another one. I'm going to put it in B tier. I don't think I can put this in A tier. I almost thought about putting it in A tier because I know that sounds weird because you're like, John, this is not meta. And I agree. But it is super generic. And I do think that does move certain like archetypes upwards a little bit. When they're so generic that they can splash with like this. And plants is one of those types in Yu-Gi-Oh! That can just like all plant cards just kind of work together. You can just mash them together and make like an insane link or synchro based like plant strategy and really actually do some crazy things. But I do still think it ends up in B tier. It's based around playing a vanilla monster in your main deck, although that monster is something you do want to draw. But it's really cool. Not only that, but we also got like Benga Lances of the Samsaric Cycle. That is the Link 4 plant that's just like a compulse every turn, and he can revive himself from grave. He's an incredibly good end board boss monster and card to just link up through for your combo, because he just gets you like insane material for your play. So really, really good there as well. I'm going to put him in B tier. Still think they could use like 1 or 2 more things, but I definitely could see plants actually being a legitimate deck, a scary deck, if they, I don't know. I do question their win condition a little bit. Like their board can obviously be decent, but is it like truly on the level of like some of these other boards we can see in Yu-Gi-Oh! With Drytron and stuff? I don't know. But I do think it has a lot of potential, and I think B tier. I think it's kind of like higher B tier for me. I think it's like above S-Force, but maybe not Spriggans, because I do still really think Spriggans have like a really cool mechanic going on in it. They might just need 1 or 2 cards. Maybe the scraps can break them. I don't know. Whatever. We'll leave them there. All right. And the last one for the Ghosts from the Past is Starry Nights. Oh, man. This is an easy C tier for me. Again, I think before Lightning Overdrive, Starry Nights were above Warrock, but now I think with the quick play spell, Warrock's like better than them, probably. Here's the problem. This deck sucks. It's based around 1 main deck monster. It only like does anything if you can just continually summon it, and if your opponent can keep you from doing that, you just like do nothing. Your deck does literally nothing. I love the artwork. I love the theme, right? Taking one of those old vanilla monsters and making something cool out of it. I just think it didn't come through in practice. So yeah, easy C tier for me. Maybe one day they'll just get like multiple kind of crazy cards and it'll like really vamp up the deck, but until then, definitely C tier. Next up, we go to Ancient Guardian. So we'll start with Soulful Chords here. I think Soulful Chords are interesting, right? I think they might be bottom, like top of C tier, but I also think they might be like bottom of B tier. I'm actually going to put them above S-Force. I'm going to put them above S-Force, below Sun Avalon. I think they're decent Pendulum cards. I just think they're just better Pendulum cards, more powerful Pendulum cards. They don't really seem to have a very good win condition, right? They don't have anything built into them. But the bonus is they don't really have any restrictions, and they have the ability to combine with any other like generic Pendulum cards that have ever existed. And they can lean on those cards for disruption while leaning on these cards to get pluses. Because that is one thing that the Soulful Chords are decent at doing, is just getting you pluses, making you go plus in the hand. or on field, which is pretty decent. So I'm going to leave him there. Definitely potential. I mean, Pendulum decks always have potential just because the mechanic is so broken. But Konami also is a little bit sparing on how often they release like new Pendulum cards. So got to consider that as well. So Silver Chords end up mid B tier for me. Next up, we have Earth's Architect. This is another one. I honestly think just because this isn't, man, I think I want to put him here, slightly above Soulful Chords. Like I said, I don't expect Konami to make a ton of Pendulum support going forward. They seem like they've been leaning off it for so long that I do think, while Pendulum, the mechanic is crazy, I do think that does hurt Soulful Chords. Whereas Earth's Arctic definitely has some cool cards. They just need the ability to like plus a little bit more. And if Konami gives them like 1 or 2 more crazy cards, the mechanic is kind of cool where you have built-in hand traps. Like the archetype can hand trap your opponent on turn 0, going second, if you open the right combination of cards, which is very cool and actually kind of strong. It means you don't need to rely on playing as many hand traps as normal, and you can play more engine cards and stuff like that. I think it's cool. It's a really cool mechanic. The design's pretty cool as well. I just think they're like a couple cards away from really jumping a tier, right? So weird thing that we notice here is that nothing here sits in A tier so far. Interesting. Next up, Ogdo Abyss. Ogdo Abyss. So this is a really, really cool one for me. I think I'm going to put them... I think these two archetypes actually have fairly similar problems. Actually, opposite problems, I would say. I'm going to put Ogdo Abyss at the top of B tier. And you might be... or Ogdo Attic at the top of B tier. You might be wondering, like, John, this deck doesn't do anything. We tried it out. We thought it was cool, but it didn't do anything. And I agree, it doesn't do much. But I think potential-wise, it actually might have the highest potential out of all of them. A lot of these decks, like, you're missing, like, starters, right? Like, Springans, they have, like, the field spell, but other than the field spell, they have, like, no starters. None of their monsters are, like, legitimate starters, and that's what they really, really need. A really good normal summon, like, I guess you can play Deep Sea Diva, but, like, you also have to play some bricks to play Deep Sea Diva, so that kind of hurts Earth's Arctic a little bit consistency-wise, right? But then when you look at Ogdo Attic, it has all the starters, right? You've got multiple normal summons. You could use either of the small guys to be normal summons, and they actually are decent normal summons, or at least Foolish Burling them from hand to use their effect to send and get like a little mini combo that way. But also Snake Rain and Water Lily are just like incredibly powerful extenders / starters, and they have like the engine developed. They just need the payoff, right? They just need like 1 or 2 extra cards. Like if they got a Link 2 that just required like 1 reptile at least, and it was like a really strong disruption, or maybe it requires specifically an Ogdo Attic monster and any other monster, and it's like a spheres type kind of card, that immediately makes this engine so much more worth, right? Because I think this engine has a lot of potential right now. It just doesn't have the payoff. You're not ending on anything super substantial with where the deck is now. It just needs a win condition that way. And then I think that immediately would bump this deck up to A tier, in my opinion. But I don't know, still play some bricks, but you know, a lot of decks play bricks now. It's 2021. If you want power, you probably need bricks. So yeah, leaving them there, that ends us off for Ancient Guardians, which moves us to Lightning Overdrive, which just came out this past weekend. Only one new archetype, funny enough, and it's Amazement. I think this archetype's really good. Oh man, this one's really tough, right? I think I'm actually gonna bump him all the way up to the top. I almost want to put him low A tier. Oh man, is it? I don't think it's good enough to be low A tier. Not yet. No, you know what? I'm going to put them low A tier for me. And maybe this is my just personal preference. Maybe they're not tier 1 out the gate, but I do think the potential for Arlecchino and like a small engine of this being splashed into other trap-based decks, I think really elevates this. Whether it's Trap Tricks, Amazement, whether it's Altergeist Amazement, whether it's Guru Amazement, whatever it is, I do think that really elevates them to the next tier. And they already can like do some things. I think a pure build could easily top a regional, just because traps are so strong, right? We have so many insane traps you can play. There can be only one you can play, and then obviously all the other normal traps. And because you have a boss monster like Arlecchino that's so easy to summon, that's the crazy part. right? Because like Subterrors have like Umastrix, but he's not. You can never get him out until at the earliest like your second turn, which is just too slow for 2021. But Arlecchino comes out on your opponent's turn and then immediately provides you disruption, and then on your turn removal, and then again disruption every single turn. Pretty damn good, right? So I'm gonna put him in A tier, but it is kind of like a lower A tier. Like obviously they're not tier 1 themselves, but I think that the ability to combine with any trap deck does really lift them up. All right, and he's the only that's the only archetype for Lightning Overdrive that was brand new. And then we moved to Dawn of Majesty, which brought us 3 new archetypes. It's going to bring us 4. We just don't have the insect archetype revealed yet, and we'll find that out the closer we get to our actual Dawn of Majesty release in like what, 2 months now. We're about 2 months away, so we got a little bit of time to go, but still, that'll be cool once we see that. As far as the stuff we already know about, first up we have Sue Ships. I'm gonna put Sue Ships. I don't know. I really don't know. I'll probably just put it bottom of C tier. I think competitively, I don't think Konami's gonna put any time or effort into actually making this like tier 1 or even Rogue. I just think they know it's a meme archetype. They know it's funny, it's interesting. People are gonna meme about it, and so you know, they wanted to make it, and I think that makes it not D tier, even though I don't think the deck really does much. The Exceeds actually aren't that bad, but like they have like a vanilla level 4, like, you know what I mean? It's like that level of stuff. I just don't think they'll really flesh this out to a real archetype. Maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe it can jump some tiers from here, but for now I'm gonna leave it here. I think it's just a funny, cool archetype. That's cool. I'm glad we have it, honestly, because we don't get enough like joke archetypes like this. But maybe Konami will take a joke archetype, make it meta. How crazy would it be if like Sue Ships ended up being meta? It'd be insane. But for now, I'm leaving it here. Next up, we have Magic Key. This is the new like ritual slash fusion slash. Is it synchro? Do they have synchros or exceeds? I think they have synchros, right? Because their ritual monsters are tuners, so I think they have synchros as well. Really weird archetype. But really cool. Only has 1 main deck monster at the moment. It's Clavis. And it's just one of those archetypes where the engine seems actually kind of cool. I think there might actually be some potential, because he's a vanilla, for something like World Chalice to be kind of interesting. You know, decks that already want to kind of play with vanillas have that synergy there. So I do think there is a little bit of potential here. I honestly think it's, I don't know. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier, very bottom of B tier, almost C tier almost, because like it's ritual based, but it is fairly, it does seem to be like a more efficient way of doing ritual summons, which we've seen kind of need to be in there. I mean, look at Drytron, right? They have an extremely efficient way of doing ritual summons, and that allows rituals to be able to compete, is by essentially just bypassing the ritual mechanic. This doesn't quite do it as well as Drytron, I don't think, but I think it's still passably decent. So I'm going to throw it here at the bottom of B tier. Still think there's some potential with like some awesome new cards, maybe in Burst of Destiny, but obviously we'll see when we see. And the very last archetype we have here is Despia. This is the next new archetype after what we talked about Spring-Ins, and we didn't get a new one in Lightning Overdrive. So this is the next Dogmatic Allure archetype here. I think this archetype probably ends up in solid A tier, to be honest. Is it going to be meta right away? I don't know. But it gives me similar vibes to Amazement, not necessarily in the trap facet of the deck, but more so that it just seems like it can combine with like any solid fusion strategy. So whether it's Invoked or whether it's Shadal's, right? Shadal seems to be a big one. This archetype seems like it generically is going to work with a couple of different things. And a lot of the cards are just +1s. Almost all the main deck monsters are just like +1. That's a +1. That's a +1. That's a +1. They have a main deck boss monster that's decent. The extra deck monsters are okay. I don't think they're actually like the greatest win conditions, but I just think the engine itself just pluses you really well. That combined with like maybe a fusion strategy that isn't that efficient, maybe this archetype can make up for it and move a deck up a couple tiers. And so that definitely brings it up for me. It's a Dogmatic Allure card, so the design is awesome. And yeah, I think this is a solid A tier. I'm going to put it above Amazement for now, but you know, all the Dogmatic Allure like archetypes have gotten at least one like more set of support every time. So it's a good sign, right? But yeah, those are the 12 archetypes. I have them in order here. So Despia, Amazement, then Ogdo Abyss, Springens, Avalon, Ursa Arctic, Sulfa Chords, S-Force, Magic Key, War Rocks, Starry Nights, and Sue Ships in that order. I'll probably update this at the end of the year, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know if you disagree on any of these things. Where would you move these, even if it's just the specifics of jostling around B tier? If you think one of these archetypes could jump the others, one should fall down, where would you move things around here? I don't know. I think this makes a lot of sense. Kind of makes a lot of mediocre archetypes and then a couple of good ones and then a couple of bad ones. So this kind of balances out fairly well. Hopefully, I mean, we also might get some support. You also got to keep that in mind. Any little support here could easily bump one of these decks up to the next tier. So we will follow that and we will see where that leads us down the line. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think on my tier list here. What would you change? What do you like about it? And yeah, I'll catch you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Peace. Whatever.